to hear from our COVID team. And, on Zoom, you have the option to be on speaker view or gallery view. Gallery view fills your whole screen with lots of small pictures. If you have speaker view, the person speaking becomes the central face, larger face that you can see. You might want to put it on speaker view. And then I would ask that our COVID team, that each person one by one, I'll call your name, and then you can introduce yourself and just give your role in the community and on this team so that people can know who is on the team. And if you speak, then your picture will come up and people get to see your face. So I wrote them down here in alphabetical order. Charlotte, you're the lucky one who gets to go first.
Wow, with the last name with an L, that's amazing. I am on the COVID committee because I'm the chair of the Worship and Music Committee, and quite honestly, I mostly sit and listen to the people that have a better understanding of what's going on around me and look at it just from the perspective of how what the committee's going to do will affect and drive the Worship and Music Committee.
And Charlotte is a very wise person who brings lots of really good insight for us. And then I think the link to the worship is very important because she brings that back to the worship team. And so her input in both places is extremely valuable. Thank you, Charlotte. I was going by first name alphabetical order. So
okay.
And guess what? That means Deb is next.
I was wondering how Louis came before Fornwalt. I'm on the COVID team. I'm also on worship and music. And there is a great connection between worship and music and COVID because they just kind of have to work, we have to work in the confines of the virus. I've also been a nurse for 236 years, give or take.
So Deb is very, very valuable. She has, she's also, by the way, she's on everything. And one of the things that she's been on is our COVID. We had an emergency team. And from the beginning, the whole community was told to call her phone number and she would give them everything that people wanted. So, but she has still been to this day taking things to people in need from the community that she found out about through social workers and our community services because of that. So thank you, Deb. You've been doing a lot on our committee and in the community.
You're welcome. My pleasure.
And after D, I have H. Herman.
Hello. I am Herman, and you know me. I'm active in different ways. I am in the COVID team because I follow what's going on in the pandemic all over the world. I follow it in the world as a whole, in the US, in Maryland, and locally in Allegheny County, and also I compare it what's happening in Europe, especially in Germany. So every day I fill in a sheet of paper with all these numbers. And what I gather from there is that the pandemic is not over at all. So we are still in the pandemic, but I think because of the vaccine, we can be, we see something that is good, and maybe we get through the pandemic. I see two problems. One is that we get tired of the pandemic, and we lose confidence, and we lose focus, and try just to do our own thing. But we need to do all these, what is, I think, the best way to go forward, all these guidelines we're gathering from our CDC and our local group. The other problem is with vaccination. Vaccination is the important part of getting through the pandemic. And there is some resistance to vaccination for several grounds. People don't believe in it. But vaccination, I would say, is a very important part of getting through this pandemic, and we encourage everybody in our congregation to get vaccinated. Pastor is vaccinated, I am fully vaccinated, the whole Reach Meal group is fully vaccinated. That makes it much easier to work with it. But keep in mind that vaccination is not completely risk-free, but it is much less rich than being exposed to the epidemic, to the COVID. So I encourage everybody to get vaccinated, and I was glad that I was able to get fully vaccinated 3 weeks ago. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Herman is an amazing gift. He is a researcher and has been helping us see the large picture. So we get to see what's happening all around the world, and then also how that relates to us locally. So he's been watching trends that happen and why some nations do better than other nations, and bringing the learning from that to us locally. So that's been extremely valuable to us, the learning about what's happening with the virus, and he's been checking all of the best sources on all those things. And Herman, I don't think it could be better said. The two concerns, one is we become weary, and the other is the resistance to vaccines. If we can, encourage each other on those two things, that would very, very valuable. Thank you for your input and wisdom.
May I make one more thing? I think in our vaccine, in our COVID team, we wanted to know what is the level of vaccination in our congregation, and we want to find out. So if you are fully vaccinated, maybe you can somehow tell pastor or somebody of our vaccination, of our COVID team about this, so we get a feel for it, how well we are vaccinated. Because once a whole group is vaccinated, then we can go with much more confidence together. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. After H comes either P or J, depending on if your name is Plunker or James. Are you on today?
I did not see him on.
Okay, so Plunker is a member of the COVID team too. A very important connection with property and with the council. So there's a very good representation with that, and thank you, Plunker, for your work and service. Rondell.
Hello. So I'm Rondell Zapp. I'm a nurse practitioner in the emergency department, and I've been in the urgent cares, but more the emergency department. So I've worked through the whole pandemic. So I tend to know kind of when we're ebbing and flowing in real time. And so I kind of bring information. I've brought a lot of information to the group on, vaccines, clinics, testing clinics, different things like that. Right now we're working on, as Herman had said, we're working on doing a survey to get more information on where we stand as a congregation on vaccines and vaccine status, because to reiterate what he said, the more people we have vaccinated, the sooner we can return to the sanctuary together. So that's kind of been my role, in just kind of letting everybody know how things are going and what we're seeing in the hospital, how busy the hospital's been, and those things. We tend to track pretty well the social events and where the COVID numbers go. And we've been able to kind of figure out how to plan for COVID spikes and flows.
So Rondell is a very valuable person. We don't want to have our meetings without her, because Rondell knows what's happening. She's the first person to find out what's happening before it's in our news, before it gets out anywhere, because she's the one who, people coming to the ER, to the emergency, she's the one diagnosing the cases. And she's also has a sense of where the cases have been, sources of spread, how it's spreading in our community, what have been the areas of danger for that, how people have been responding to the illness. She's let us know as the illness takes on new symptoms that we weren't expecting at the beginning, and how those things change. So we have gotten to know from the very beginning what's happening at the moment in our community faster than it gets in the news. And that's pretty incredible. And also up to date, when we met on Wednesday, she was talking about, well, I have some material to read over afterwards to inform about I think it was in that case about vaccines. So not only do we know what's happening in our community, but we have all the most up-to-date information with the research that Rondell and Herman are doing about what's being advised around the world. We got the best information on that. Thank you. And then we also have valuable, incredible information from Val input.
Yeah, I recently retired as a contact tracer for the state of Maryland. So I, along with Rondell and Herman, have been kind of the data person, looking at trends, looking at numbers, positivity rates, and bringing that information to the group.
And Val, what happens once someone is diagnosed with COVID? And Val has been the person following up with people with that about how to figure out where it's spread, contacting who are the contacts. And so we've gotten recommendations from her on what happens once people are diagnosed. So that's an incredible team. Thank you all. Could we briefly, Rondell, could you briefly give us a picture of where we are right now in the county with the disease?
Well, we look like we're on an uptrend. I'm sorry, I wasn't 100% prepared. Yeah. So we've been on a little bit of an uptrend. We're not nearly like where we were in the fall or anything like that. But we are seeing more cases. As I had said in our meeting, the good thing is I feel like we're seeing more cases in younger people because a lot of our elderly people in the county are diagnosed, so are immunized. So it really goes to show that, the change in the demographic kind of supports getting the vaccine, because we're not seeing a lot of the elderly people. On yesterday, we were at 3.53%. There had been 49 new cases since Monday. So last week there were 49 new cases, but no deaths last week. But Maryland's at 5.67%. It does look like there's a third wave coming. And my hope is that we continue to get more people vaccinated so our third wave doesn't look anything like our second wave. And these waves start to become smaller curves as we go on. So I guess we're on an uptrend, but hopefully we will see less severe illness because of more vaccines.
So Val was sharing that in the last 2 weeks, we had a 77%, I think, increase. And that was something, Rondell, that you had predicted, that you told us we were going to have an upswing just because of looking at the trends for St. Patrick's Day and Easter and what was happening in the community. Rondell, when you say that we are at, we're under the 5%, we're at 3 what percent was that? What does that mean?
So that's the percentage of the population that's positive. So that's been the number that they continue to track for Allegheny County. I'm not sure when they stop counting. Val might know better about when they stop counting people, because back a year ago there was the question of why aren't we testing for negative, and there for a period of time they were testing people, and then we found out that once you're positive for a while, but you're not contagious for as long. So Val probably has more information on how they actually get that percentage, or Herman, but the percentage is the percentage of the population that's considered positive.
So that
it's based on number of people per 100,000 population. And of course, with smaller counties like ours, it's a little bit different, but it's based on population and the percentage of the population.
But for a while, we were famous for being the highest in the country.
Yes.
Yeah, there was a time when we were the worst in the whole country, and then we got much better, and now we are uptaking a little bit. So we have to be really careful.
So I don't know what the highest we got to, but was something like 15, 17%.
Yeah, that was.
And now it's down to 3 point something.
Mhm.
What needs to happen, let any of you jump in, but what needs to happen for us to worship again in person? I think that's one of the questions that has been pressing on people's minds that I've talked to.
Well, one of the things we talked about, we need to have our pastor fully vaccinated and 2 weeks out from his second vaccine, because the rest of us can make a choice. If we say we're going back to in person, the rest of us can choose whether or not to come. Pastor will not have that choice. So we have to protect him. And that's going to be, when did you say, Pastor, you will have your 2 weeks out from your vaccine?
So I had my second vaccine this last Thursday. So 2 weeks from this last Thursday, less than 2 weeks away, I will be 2 weeks out of my last vaccine.
Yeah.
So that's good progress.
Yes.
Okay, so one thing is you want your pastor to be vaccinated, and I have been, and 2 weeks out of that, so that's coming up soon. What else do we need to have?
Well, I think we have to bring down the whole level, and we have to see what's happening around us. We are not isolated.
Yeah.
So the whole picture needs to come in also. Not only the pastor, but also the musicians should be vaccinated. That's probably one. And the ushers, for instance, that would help greatly, yes.
So, and we have said for a number, following kind of the guideline of the bishop does not put mandates out, but he does strongly encourage, very lovingly encourage. So he has said under 5%, and we have 3 point something percent. So we're under that number. Also, we don't want to have active cases of COVID coming to worship together. We have had a number of people with COVID who have been recovering from that.
Mhm.
Everyone in all of the musicians are fully vaccinated and have their 2 weeks out, so we're all good here.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, and I think, we talked about watching trends, and my concern, Allegheny County was very late having their first case. The rest of the state was seeing cases, and Allegheny and Garrett County were slow. So right now, Washington County and Frederick County are experiencing very high rates of infection again. Pennsylvania as a whole is
Yeah.
going skyrocketing. And I don't think we can let our guard down. We need to continue to watch trends. And, as Herman said, we're really encouraging people to get vaccinated, because we also talked that we would feel more comfortable if we knew 70 to 80% of the congregation attending services would be fully vaccinated.
So that makes us feel much better about, that's the number that the COVID team would be more comfortable having, 70, 80%. And we talked about what we're going to do about that. We don't want to have a, interrogator at the door saying, have you been vaccinated? And only let those who've been vaccinated in the door. We're not going to do that. Nor do we want to have everyone in the congregation identify themselves and say whether they've been vaccinated or not. There is confidentiality in this. There are very personal reasons. In discussion with the bishop, there were some people who could not talk about why they couldn't be vaccinated. Very personal, difficult things about that. So what we would like to do is just send out a survey, monkey survey on you'd get in an email, and it's anonymous. We don't know who answers that. There's no name or identification of you, but it would just ask some questions about if you have had difficulty getting vaccines, if you've been able to get yours, and it would simply let us know, give us an idea in the congregation of where people stand. If we only get a few of those back, it won't tell us a lot. If we get a whole bunch back and most of them are saying that people have been vaccinated, or if a number want to be vaccinated but haven't been able to yet, then we know that we need to focus on how to help people overcome those obstacles. It'll give us a direction to go with that, a sense.
Yes.
I'm not on the committee, but if I can break in on this aspect. As many of you know, my 7-month-old grandson came down with COVID this past weekend. And I am so grateful that we are vaccinated. Right before he started displaying symptoms, I was up in his face. He was, when he first started with symptoms, he was coughing in my face. I have been feel very fortunate that I'm vaccinated because I am healthy. Rick is healthy. His dad is healthy. Leanne has come down with a few symptoms, but she has tested negative. The people that he was around where we feel he got the COVID from, those that were vaccinated are all healthy. It's the ones that were unvaccinated that are sick.
Mhm.
Now, you know, no medicine is 100% effective. So I'm not going to sit here and tell you that if you get vaccinated, you absolutely positively will not get COVID. But your chances are so much less. And as a nurse, sorry about the dog, and as a grandparent whose grandchild has COVID, I would highly recommend it. You know, I would much rather, there's a lot of people that don't like needles. I don't like needles, but I would much rather have a shot than have an intubation tube shoved down my throat.
April, thank you for that. And by the way, April was, I don't know if you heard that, but her grandchild Gatlin is 7 months old. So, you know, still a baby, not even a year old, and has the illness and has been quite uncomfortable. And if you can imagine a baby, you know, would need care. And so she having her vaccine feels safer taking care of. Otherwise, that's a pretty high spread.
Perhaps Rondell could address the theory that it changes your DNA and address a few of the fears that people have and a few of the reasons why they're not taking the vaccine. Sorry, Rondell. Step up to the plate.
Oh, good. So the
Love you, Rondell.
love you too. There are people, there's stories out there that it changes your DNA because it's an mRNA vaccine. I had sent some information out before that kind of explained it somewhat, but basically this vaccine the vaccine technology that they're using has been researched for greater than 30 years. I know a lot more about Moderna and Pfizer's vaccine and how they work. So mRNA is basically the messenger RNA that teaches your body how to fight something. So this vaccine technology was started as research for HIV vaccine. If any of us had been told that somebody was going to put inactivated HIV virus in us to keep us from getting HIV, we'd have all said, no, you're not putting HIV in me. So they knew that when HIV came to be. So for greater than 30 years, they've been researching this, but then they've had, you know, more education and better treatment. So we never actually came to this need for this HIV vaccine, but they continue to research it. It also shows promise in cancer research and cancer vaccines. And actually now we're starting to hear about cancer vaccines now that we've got our COVID vaccines out. And the oncologist at the hospital was very hopeful that this is how that would go. But so that being said, the mRNA is simply a instruction to the body to teach it how to fight COVID. And it lasts in the body very short. So it basically goes into your body, teaches your body how to make these antibodies to attack the coronavirus if it comes into your body, and then it metabolizes away. So there's no change to your DNA, your underlying structure. That's just not something that can happen. So, so that was one of the rumors that has circulated. While I'm on it, I'll say another rumor I had seen on social media that becomes very, very sensitive for people was that this vaccine was developed from aborted fetal cells from the 70s. And that's simply not true. There was one company that was doing research and they were using those cells, that company's vaccine did not go forward and it did not get approved. It never really went anywhere. Moderna and Pfizer's vaccine were not part of that. They didn't participate in that. And that's why, most of the churches support the vaccine, whereas they may not have supported the vaccine if it was in fact created from aborted cells. So this vaccine has nothing to do with that. So those are kind of two of the big social media things that I've heard. And I've seen, there's another phenomena that's happening now. I'm just seeing some research come out, people who have long haul COVID. These are people who are requiring oxygen or getting short of breath with the littlest activity, not being able to work their full shift yet still after they've had COVID a couple of months ago. They're getting vaccinated and they're starting to get better. So getting that mRNA to teach their body how to kind of fight, they're actually improving from the long haul COVID symptoms. So that's the answer to a couple of those things. I don't know if anybody has any other questions regarding the vaccine or stories that they've heard about the vaccine.
So with the vaccine, people are not being injected with a dead or inactive vaccine. They are being taught how to fight it.
Yes, it's a strand of mRNA, which is messenger RNA, so RNA is how our body, how it learns, in this case, to fight the vaccine. So it's just a piece of the messenger that goes in and says, this is what you need to do. So then we develop the antibodies to fight the vaccine. But we're not getting an activated vaccine. This is not so the flu vaccine is an activated vaccine. And that's what we get with the flu vaccine. And again, you still have a little bit of symptoms. With the vaccine, you may have, some people get some mild symptoms with the first vaccine. A lot of people get mild symptoms for usually 12 to 36 hours. I have seen people as far out as a week still having body aches and such after the second vaccine, but that's your body showing that it's responding. That being said, I've also, in our company, we were blessed that our company sent us out antibody tests. So after we were vaccinated, we were able to check our antibodies. So there are people who had no symptoms after the second vaccine, and they were concerned that their body didn't develop, the immunity, but then they had antibodies. And then those of us who, had moderate symptoms, we developed antibodies. And those who were floored, my husband was out for 2 days. He developed antibodies. So everybody developed antibodies regardless of how their body responded. But the typical people seem to have symptoms for 1 to 2 days that starts about 12 hours after the second shot. Tylenol is fine. I took ibuprofen as well, and we ran the gamut. With me and my coworkers, we were some of the first ones to get it. So we didn't have the luxury of making sure we were off the day after. Plus we didn't know what was going to happen. So we all worked. And I've heard about not taking Tylenol and Motrin. And we say that all the time with vaccines, but honestly, we all took Tylenol and Motrin because we had to keep taking care of people. We were still working, we were scheduled to work. So we all took Tylenol and Motrin. Every one of us has antibodies when we tested. So there's that.
Thank you. So this gives you a little bit of a peek of some of what the meetings have been. Val was talking about not only looking what's happening in our county, but neighboring counties, and then we're looking at the disease itself. You can either use the chat or speak up if you would like to ask questions. Do want to give opportunities for other people to ask questions or comments.
I do want to mention if anybody's on Facebook, I'm looking here at UPMC. Just so you know, beginning tomorrow, the COVID-19 vaccine is going to be available at some of the urgent cares and primary cares. You can call ahead and schedule an appointment. And if you watch on the UPMC page and the Allegheny County Health Department page, we have reached the point in vaccination where they're opening up walk-in clinics and such. My 28-year-old who does not have any qualifying health conditions was able to walk in and get a vaccine 2 days ago because we're at that point in our vaccination. So if you're somebody who is not high risk, start looking for those clinics if you've been waiting, because now they're out there.
And if you need help doing that, please contact one of us. And we will make sure that we, we'll help you get connected with that if you'd like to.
Pastor,
Yeah.
can you explain to us what the questions might be on the Survey Monkey, which might help people decide whether or not they would respond to that?
Mm-hmm. Rondell, you were going to work on that.
So, some of the questions were, have you been vaccinated? Are you planning to be vaccinated? If you're not planning to be vaccinated, I want to have, if I can get it set up, to just give a free text so that we can kind of understand why somebody wouldn't want to, if they want to share that. That doesn't, have to be shared. And there were a couple other questions. There was,
If they'd like to be, if they planning to, but haven't been able to.
yes, if they were planning to and haven't been able to and need help finding resources. We actually had that conversation before all of these emails or these messages came out in the past 2 days, opening up these vaccine clinics. So we're hoping to help people to get to the vaccine if they're trying to get the vaccine and just are hitting roadblocks. So very, very vague type questions or direct questions, but it's definitely, it was very important to us that we look at a anonymous survey venue in order to do it, because we just want information. We don't want
ship with this on, because I don't know what to do with it.
we don't want anybody to feel singled out, but we're just trying to get an idea of where the congregation stands as far as vaccination, choices for vaccination.
I feel like I
and
should say I'm leaving.
If we have 70 to 80% of the congregation vaccinated, that's the number that goes along with herd immunity. So once we get to that herd immunity number, then we can be more confident being in the sanctuary that we're not going to be a super spreader at some point.
Gary,
you thought-
another question that we thought we might include would be, even when all is said and done, if you've been vaccinated or that the people around you are going to be vaccinated,
Oh, yeah.
are you going to be coming back to in-person services? We just kind of want to get a feel for where the congregation is.
Okay.
Part of the question for that is, do we need to plan 2 services on a Sunday morning or 1 service on a Sunday morning? If we're getting, so just for the plan, but it was about 5 questions maybe. It wouldn't take a long time to do, and the instructions are right in there.
And I know that there are several people probably who do not have skills with internet and email and all that kind of thing. Have you thought about putting that survey in a newsletter format so that those who do not use email and are not going to respond to a Survey Monkey, that they could also respond?
Sure.
I personally think we could do that and maybe leave a box for people to drop them in. If that's what people want. Our big thing was we wanted to make sure that nobody felt that they were singled out or that their confidentiality was compromised. But I don't see any problem with doing a questionnaire and allowing people to drop it in a Dropbox.
May I add one more thing? I know that in Maryland now, everybody 16 years or older are eligible for vaccination. So.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions?
I think it would be, I have been vaccinated 4 weeks ago and were able to see my grandchildren the first time in a year. It was wonderful. But on that survey, if you could list the names and the telephone numbers, if anybody has any question, they can then, call the person directly. I think that would be helpful.
Oh, yeah.
Excellent. Thank you.
Hey, Pastor, this is the other Swanson. I have kind of a 2-part question. Can vaccinated people still carry and transfer COVID-19?
Yes.
Sorry, that was yes?
Right now we say
In
yes.
principle, it's possible, yes.
Okay. So my second part to the question is, if we have in-person worship and a vaccinated person transfers the illness to a non-vaccinated person, are there any legal ramifications for the church from that?
My understanding is if we follow CDC guidelines, there would not be. And so that's a good question, because what I understand so far as the guidelines is it's okay for vaccinated people to be together. But there's a little bit of an unknown there with that part of it, Devin.
Yeah, well, and Devin, I think even though, there may be vaccinated, I think the intent, and correct me, the rest of the committee if I'm wrong, we were still going to be wearing masks and still practicing social distancing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. What we don't know. So these are the unknowns, because unfortunately everything with COVID is happening in real time and it's fluid. So we're learning as we go. So Herman had actually said something the other day in our meeting about they're saying up to 6 months, immunity with the vaccine. When we got the vaccine, it was 3 months, and we're constantly learning because they have to keep testing and giving us the information in real time, because this is all happening as it happens. So the thought is they can't guarantee that someone who's been vaccinated can't spread it. So we treat it as though someone who's been vaccinated can absolutely spread it. And that's the safer thing to do. And that's why vaccinated people still have to wear masks when they're in public places.
Mm-hmm.
So we might find out that that's not even the case. But for now, our belief and our understanding is to err on the side of caution. So we act as though and we practice as though that is absolutely the case.
Yeah, and another point is attendance at church is voluntary. And we plan on continuing the Zoom at least for a while, I think. And Charlotte has talked about, looking at outdoor services, which would be much safer. So I think, we're looking at all the COVID restrictions and trying to follow CDC guidelines, but it's always going to be voluntary whether you decide to come to church and attend an in-church service.
Thank you.
Except for the pastor, and he has to be there.
This is Dale Louie. Going to Devin question. We all know that anybody can sue anybody. So no matter what we do, there is always that possibility. Having said that, besides the steps that this COVID committee is laying out with the mask, et cetera, and I think they've done a fantastic job. If we are concerned about this liability, and it has been a topic in Congress for businesses, I'm not sure about churches. And so far, Congress has not granted immunity to businesses on the topic that Devin has brought up. So I'm not sure where churches stand in that conversation. I would ask church council, to consider perhaps some type of wording that would be in any bulletin, perhaps, that we hand out, if we're going to hand out a bulletin at any gathering of our congregation, or at the very least, put it up on the screen in a sanctuary, what our expectations are in terms of mask, etc. So from a legal standpoint, we are covering our bases to the best of our ability. Thank you.
Thank you, Dale. That's a good point.
I think that if you intend to worship and you're not vaccinated, then you're taking the risk on yourself to get the COVID. So in that standing, I think that people should definitely, to protect themselves, get vaccinated. Walt and I got our vaccinations a month ago. Mm-hmm. And we got the Johnson & Johnson. So I guess we're safer now because it's a month, But, Walt works at Walmart. So I think he's very lucky that he has not come down with COVID this whole time. And I felt it was very demanding that he get something to protect himself. Even, though he wore the mask and social distancing, but still he was with the public the whole time.
Mhm.
So I think God was definitely with him. But he so far has made it through all this without being sick.
Thanks be to
Yes,
God.
that is a great Thanksgiving. God has sure been with us and watching over us. We had a legal question and we have a lawyer in our midst. David, would you want to comment on that?
Yes, please. To start with, this is an eternal argument among lawyers and business owners and churches and everything. But for 100 years, the first rule is the signing a waiver is worthless. I mean, everybody has them, everybody signs them, and they always get thrown out. I won't bother you with why usually, but the key point is the best practices. As long as you follow the CDC guidelines, you should be fine ultimately. And then there's also something called assumption of risk. Like I go to karate at 70 years old. Okay, if I get hurt, I've assumed the risk, and that you would have to show gross negligence or culpable nature. Forget culpable nature. You'd have to show gross negligence to on the part of the school for me to be able to collect. So it's like what that comes down to for the church is, as long as we follow the regulations, and maybe I don't want to either be seen as suggesting it or not suggesting it, but there's always the chance of signing an assumption of risk form. So where you say you understand that this is a possibility. It may not, I'm not sure that I want to be that person for this church or any church, but that would be your most reasonable thing.
And we're taking a lot of precautions. Even when we come back together, I think that we will have projection instead of bulletins handed out. We'll have the hand, sanitizers. We'll have people enter in front to back and be dismissed back to front. We'll have ushers who are opening the doors. We'll be wearing masks, physical distancing. And so we take those steps. And then after that, Jesus says, take up your cross and follow me. And that's not risk-free. So in following God, we do what we can to protect each other. But then I've been, seen a lot of congregations that out of fear of risks don't do anything. And that's not characteristic of our congregation. So we'll be wise and we'll keep forward.
One more thing I want to add. People ask, when can we be together, fully together? And this is very hard to answer, because it depends on so many variables. We cannot predict how people respond. We cannot predict how the pandemic is evolving. We cannot predict many things. So to answer the question, when can we be all together, is at the moment we cannot answer, but we would like to work towards this goal, of course, and that requires that everybody continues to participate in this effort. Thank you.
Thank you, Herman. Other questions?
As we pray to God for help with COVID and to keep us free of it and to help those that get it and so on, I kind of believe that we should at least meet God a little bit more than halfway. And I think one way of doing that, of course, is following all that we've been talking about.
Thank you.
I just want to commend the COVID committee for their caution and wisdom. You've kept us safe thus far through all of this uncertain time, and I just appreciate your efforts so much. I was talking to a clergy person recently from another denomination, and their higher church decided that they would come back to worship, in-person worship, and he felt that that was a premature decision. He said they've been lucky thus far that no one has come down with COVID, but he felt very uncertain about that decision. So it made me all the more appreciative of your caution, and I appreciate all your work.
I really appreciate that too. I'm very, very thankful to the COVID team. And then on behalf of the COVID team, would like to thank the congregation for your support and cooperation with that, because there are pastors I've spoken to who have not had that. And it's difficult when you have a congregation like you were just describing, Kathy, that's pushing for something that's, so I think there's a big thank you for the COVID team, and a big thank you also on behalf of COVID team to the congregation for being willing to support that. Rondell, she doesn't name names, but she does say that churches have been a source of spread in our own community, and that churches gain reputations for that. And that ours does not have a reputation that we don't want.
Sure.
I would just like to thank all of you for sharing today. I think it's been a valuable learning experience. The last 45 minutes have taught me a few things, even as I lived with a COVID caller. So thank you all for your expertise.
Thank you, Kerry.
The one thing that came to my mind as we first started this conversation was, but everybody else is doing it. And I thought about when I was little, when my mom would say, well, if your friends jumped off a cliff, would you do that too? And I feel like that's what we're not doing. We're not jumping off the cliff. We're being smart about it. So thank you all so much.
Yeah, we're looking at different factors that have more to do with COVID than what is everyone else doing. And that's been something that takes discipline, but I've been thankful for the COVID team for that. So yes, thank you. And I also am glad for the willingness, the participation today of our COVID team, because I've been trying to imagine what it's like for the congregation to think, well, does our COVID team just get together and talk about, do we feel like worshiping together or not? I want you to know that there's more to it than just what people feel like doing on the team. That there's a lot of very specific information that people have been carefully tracking with a lot of knowledge. So thank you. Shall we have our closing blessing if there's not another question?
If anybody has developed questions or has any issues with vaccination, just reach out to the church, and they can reach out to any of us and see how we can help you. Either answer questions or find a vaccine spot. And Val shared, if you don't have the chat up, Val shared MarylandVax.org has a resource for finding the COVID vaccine for you. So
yeah, any obstacles that you have, let us know and we'll help you overcome them.
I want to say thank you to each of you working on this. It has been informative, and thank you for keeping us safe.